Welcome to Seen and Heard podcast, where everyone should be seen and heard. I'm your host, Sharon, and I'm with my co hosts, Chrissy and Charles. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Did any of you see the hearing today in Tennessee? What happened in Tennessee?
No, I only just followed your feed, and um,
It
from
was,
this video here, it's a good thing. I mean, they're really creating. It's like they're creating martyrs for the cause, and these things they backfire. And
mhm.
I mean, although I'm assuming this is only coming out in TikTok. I don't, is any other media picking this up? These big
Well,
protests.
earlier it was I was following everything on YouTube. There was a live stream on YouTube, and then there was Twitter. So I was following Tennessee Holler on Twitter and the Nashville Resistance, and listening to it all on the YouTube live stream. I'm going to play a clip of Justin Jones. He was one of the representatives, and this young man is like you said, making a martyr of these guys. This young man is impressive.
We called for you all to ban assault weapons, and you respond with an assault on democracy. For years, one of your colleagues who was an admitted child molester sat in this chamber, no expulsion. One member sits in this chamber who was found guilty of domestic violence, no expulsion. We had a member pee in another member's chair in this chamber, no expulsion. Since you're trying to put us on trial, I'll say what you're really putting on trial is the state of Tennessee. A state in which the Ku Klux Klan was founded is now attempting another power grab by silencing the two youngest black representatives and one of the only women, Democratic women in this body. It is in that spirit of speaking for my constituents, of being a representative of the people, that I approached this well on last Thursday, breaking a House rule, but exercising moral obedience to my constitutional responsibility to be a voice for my people, to be a voice for the Tennesseans who you choose not to listen to because of those NRA checks. For so long, this body, drunk with power, has modeled for the world what we know as nothing less than authoritarianism. And today is the climax of that behavior. But you will not be victorious because there are generations of young people who see what is going on. There are young people that as you try and beat us down, they are rising up to take back this state. That is why the nation is watching you today.
And it wasn't just the nation. Everybody around the world saw those shenanigans.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I mean, how much is it really truly being seen?
Well, from TikTok, it was global. And then I don't know where the people were besides the United States that were watching it on YouTube, because I don't know how their copyright is or if they have to watch with the VPN or not. But it was pretty much global. Because when I before we got on here tonight, I was checking the lives on YouTube, and the Japanese news was talking about it, and the Australian news, I believe, and one South Korean feed. So they were talking about it.
Okay. Well, once again, that's my concern. I mean, oftentimes our stories do go global, but it doesn't matter. It's the local, it's the national, how much is the Tennessee news covering it? How much is the national media covering it? I'm afraid that this is maybe completely hidden. I don't know. I hope not. I hope this is getting out there. And his speech, you're right. He's eloquent. He's well spoken. I mean, so is Fred Hampton. Okay. I mean, it's the same point I'm making all the time. We live in a post-political era. Okay. It doesn't matter. You can be as eloquent as you want. Yeah. I mean, you can even be literally correct on an issue. It just doesn't matter anymore. I mean, if you saw Marjorie Taylor Greene's 60 Minutes interview, these people are in their own universe, right?
Yep.
They don't function by the same rules of like, you should have facts, you should argue your point. You don't. We don't function that way politically. We function, might makes right. That really cynical book, The 48 Laws of Power. That's how things really work. We live in this fictional liberal world where people debate things, they give evidence, they make rational decisions. You look at the world, none of that is actually true.
Not
just
anymore.
go up there and just say the most outlandish, outrageous, bizarre shit, and your echo chamber will take it over. And you're dealing with an entire population of people that are just stuck in fear. They are not based in reality anymore. So it's, again, this guy, he's well spoken, he's articulate, he's making the right points, et cetera, et cetera. If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? It doesn't. If no one's there to witness it, it doesn't matter. like I said, people still don't know who Fred Hampton is.
All right. Give us a little history lesson.
We're 60 years behind the curve. I would argue we're 150 years behind the curve. People still don't know, the relevant, arguments that have to do with political questions. We're entirely ignorant of Marx. We're entirely ignorant of Darwin. We're entirely ignorant of Freud. I mean, these people are over a century ago that they wrote. So when we talk about, they're calling them fascists, right? So right wing, conservative, fascist. Another word is reactionary, and an important part of fascism is that they idealize the past while at the same time being entirely ignorant of it. Okay, that's what we call reactionary, right? So I mean, these are people who react against modernity. So, things that were already well established, that are undeniable from over a century ago, they're still resisting. So that's what I mean by how far behind the curve they are. And once again, it doesn't matter. They could just say whatever kind of idiotic crap they want, and they're not listening to you. They're not part of a debate. They are not in dialogue with anybody. So anyway, that's my.
They are wide open with it. I want to play this one clip before I play Justin Pearson. He is another Justin. And when you mentioned Fred Hampton, he kind of reminds me of Fred Hampton in the way he spoke. But I want to play this clip of GOP representative disrespecting him first. And this part, I mean, they're just wide open with the racist nonsense now. So like you said, they have no reason to hide anymore. So this is Andrew Farmer from Sevierville. Sevierville is up there near Dolly Parton and Pigeon Forge and all that stuff.
With an adolescent bullhorn. It doesn't give you the right to enrage folks that are here to watch this body conduct business and talk about things you know good and well that we've worked hard. We've worked very hard to protect our children here in the state of Tennessee. Very hard. You know what? And what you could do, you could file a piece of legislation that maybe would do that instead of sitting back and criticizing folks that's worked really hard for the past decade to do so. That might be a place to start. But certainly don't start by commandeering the well while we're conducting business here in this Tennessee General Assembly. That's why you're standing there, because of that temper tantrum that day, for that yearning to have attention. That's what you wanted. Getting it now. So I just advise you, if you want to conduct business in this house, file a bill. Be recognized, stand there and present it, and pass it. All you got to do is pass the bill.
Representative Pearson.
Now, you all heard that. How many of you would want to be spoken to that way? How many of you would want to be spoken to that way? We're not talking about politics. We're not talking about even gun violence. How many of you would want to be spoken to that way? The reason that I believe the sponsor of this legislation, of this resolution, spoke that way is because he's comfortable doing it. Because there's a decorum that allows it. There's a decorum that allows you to belittle people. We didn't belittle nobody. What we said was that we broke a house rule because we're fighting for kids who are dying from gun violence and people in our communities who want to see an end to the proliferation of weaponry in our communities, and that leads to our expulsion. This is not democracy. This is not what it is supposed to look like, and everybody needs to be very afraid and very worried that there are people in positions of power who are using and wielding that power to expel people who are duly elected to their seats. I've lost a classmate this year from gun violence. My mentor died last year from gun violence. We are dealing with a gun violence epidemic, and the resolution is not to silence the voices of people who send us here to the people's house to speak with them and for them. It is to make sure we do just legislation. It's to make sure we fight for red flag laws. We fight for good storage laws. We fight to make sure that this is a democracy and maintains its democratic principles. But that's what's being lost today. We broke a house rule because we're fighting for kids who are dying from gun violence. And
those young men are oppressive.
Yeah, but unfortunately, so Sevierville, unfortunately, that constituency likes how Farmer talked to him. If you will, put that boy in his place. Remember, right. Boy was how you referred to all black men of all ages, right? So a young white boy would go to an older black man and say, boy.
Mm-hmm, right.
So I think that's, I don't think, that's what he's getting
That's exactly what
he's like,
meant.
This guy is comfortable talking down to me because I'm black. because that's what every generation of that guy's family and every family that white guy's in community. That's
Right.
100% of them talk to black people.
Oh
So in
yeah,
other words, he's saying
and that
there's no
wasn't the only
exception
one.
here.
Yeah, that wasn't the only one today.
Oh, I'm
It
sure
was
they all did. No, I think that's what he's. But again, I mean, none of this matters. That's what's so sad. It's very frustrating. You know that again, it doesn't even matter if you're right anymore. It just, might makes right. We live in an upside down world. We have to wait for these people to die. It's so sad that that's the point we've reached. But you don't see that guy farmer. He's not engaging in dialogue. All of a sudden, he's all about dialogue when it comes to, I need to be free to be as just nasty as I want to be. Otherwise, we're going to shut you down. And the irony is, what we really need to do is shut them down. I mean, as a race, of humanity, I think needs to finally come together. And I think we have to finally say there are certain emotional vibrational frequencies that are not welcome in the public sphere anymore. And that is that of fear, of bigotry, of disgust. So in psychology, they found that which determines a person's political perspective is, for conservatives, it's people who have a higher tendency and who feel more intense feelings of disgust. So if you've seen conservatives, oh, that young black guy, did you hear the way he talked? It's disgust. Do you see what I'm saying? That guy who so versus, Pearson, who was like, he had indignation and justifiable. And he was calm and he was eloquent. He was persuasive. The other guy just sat up there and said, disgust, disgust, disgust. And all his constituency were like, yeah, we're full of contempt and disgust for that uppity young little black boy. You see what I mean? Disgust. So there are certain vibrational frequencies we just have to say they are not welcome in the public sphere anymore.
And then another part of it was the immigrant. It was Sabi Kumar. I was just when I was watching the way he was talking to Mr. Jones, he was talking basically. Wait, hold on. I'm going to pull his exchange up, and then we're going to talk on the other side of that. The immigrant. Oh, the immigrant that comes here to this country, and then they have the nerve to be racist. I mean, they wouldn't have been allowed here if it wasn't for my parents that marched for civil rights. And then he has the nerve to talk to black and brown people like he did. This is Mr. Kumar from India.
In those 53 years in America, I have never encountered a racial slur. I'm really not aware that any of that applies to me. I live a good life. Yet, you on tape call me a brown face. Yes, sir, it's on tape.
He's so confused.
And what I told you was what you just exhibited. As the only member of their caucus who was not of the Caucasian persuasion, I said that you put a brown face on white supremacy. That's what I said.
In those 50.
He's exactly right. This guy, Kumar, has no clue. He's very confused. He's deeply ignorant, which is why he's the perfect coon. And let's remember that immigrants are typically extremely conservative. Why? Because he represents the upper class that had the privilege of coming here. And they come here and they're professionals, they're educated, they're they start businesses. So they're immediately, in terms of class, right, representative of very conservative, the barbarians are at the gate kind of mentality. And
that's that model minority.
Let's talk about India. Okay, let's talk about what a miserable, fucked up place India is. Okay, there is this thing. There's a concept there. Okay, I'm going to teach you guys. There's this thing called Anglo-Indians. Okay, these are brown-skinned Indian natives like him who are born and raised in India, who have brown skin just like him, but they are so heavily identified with the British Empire that though they've never stepped foot in England, in the UK, they're not from there. They're not white. Their ancestors are not, but they believe themselves to be Englishmen. They say things like back home. I mean, they consider themselves to be on foreign ground. This is an entire class of super upper crust Indian people. So he's one of those Anglo-Indians who are like, hey, the British, at least they, hey, maybe they did some bad things. I don't know, but at least they brought us the railroad.
And who built
talk
the
about
railroad?
Coonism, right? No, but I'm telling you, this is the kind of mentality they're coming. So who the hell is he to say these things? Get your own house in order first. Okay, there's a shameful level of racism in India, okay, of self internalized racism. So for him to come here, and then he's so clueless that he doesn't even understand what brownface is, and for him to say in the 53 years I've never had racial slur, that's a damn lie. First of all,
Right.
that is a goddamn lie. First of all, shame on you, you degenerate, bootlicking piece of shit. Okay, first of all, he's lying, and furthermore, for him to and just to be so clueless, like, oh, you called me brown face. No, he's saying you're a person of color. But again, when you think you're white, and to have someone call you a brown face is shocking. How dare
and that's
you?
not even racist. And the way that he corrected himself.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is he comes from a worldview that's so deranged that calling him brown face, again, he comes from this Anglo-Indian thing where they consider themselves white and British.
Mm-hmm.
How dare he call me a brown face? I'm a red-blooded American. He's basically saying it's his version. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right. Because he was allowed to come over here and spew that nonsense.
It's only very recently that Asian immigrants have become Democrat at all. Typically, they were all very conservative Republicans, extremely. I mean, I'm speaking from experience. You know, my parents are very deeply conservative Republicans. I mean, that's a whole thing. And like I said, it's only very recently that you start seeing Asian Democrats.
And actually, and that number is actually going up as well, because a lot of the young Asians, because of how they were raised with their conservative elders, because the conservative elders, when they came over here, they were placed in that model minority slot to be used as a wedge between the black Americans. That was after the 60s, after the white government saw the Asians and the Black Panthers and the civil rights activists coming together. Then they coined the term model minority to bust up that union. So, but now the young Asians are learning about that little trick, and they're flipping the script. That display there was just really, that infuriated me to no end, because I was just like, if it wasn't for my parents literally doing the Montgomery bus boycotts, marching against these fire hoses and racist stuff.
Let's make it really clear. I was at Berkeley when they first got rid of affirmative action. Okay. And at the time we had a Chinese professor, Chancellor Tian, who was easily our most popular chancellor pretty much of all time up until then. Okay. He barely spoke any English, and everybody absolutely adored him. He was this tiny little Chinese physicist, right? He invented some sort of laser or something. He's like some sort of genius, but he was incredibly popular. And when they got rid of affirmative action at Berkeley, he resigned in protest. And he said, I want to make it clear. I did my PhD in Kentucky, at the University of Kentucky. He said, I had to go to segregated bathrooms. I have not forgotten that. So, he and I don't know if you know that we should cover that too. That was spearheaded by a black regent, that getting rid of affirmative action. He was a total, Candace Owens slash what's that idiot on the Supreme Court?
Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas. He was one of those Clarence Thomas type coons, both of whom, or let's say all three of whom, benefited tremendously, fundamentally from none of those three would be there at all. I mean, these guys were made to look bad by a fascist frigging war criminal like what's it, Powell? Is it Dick Powell? Huh? No, Powell, the black general.
Colin Powell.
Colin Powell put them to shame. I mean, and this guy is no angel. I mean, he was the person put in charge of the My Lai massacre to cover it up. That is right.
Right.
So he is no saint, and yet even he came out and said, wow, you guys are just off your rocker. Like he is the perfect. As a matter of fact, affirmative action is one of the best examples is the military. As a result of both first integration, they integrated the military decades before society. They implemented affirmative action decades before society. And they did both because it was practical, useful, and beneficial, because you get the most out of the most people. And as a result, all the way up to the highest levels, you saw good integration. And Powell is a perfect example of that. I mean, he rose to the absolute highest ranks you could as a direct result of proactive affirmative action. So, so he didn't say all this, by the way. He just said, Clarence Thomas, all these people are off their minds, that affirmative action is important, necessary, and et cetera, et cetera. And he didn't spell it out the way I did.
They pull the ladder
no,
up.
but their
existence
and success is itself the most obvious. Clarence Thomas is in that position because of affirmative action. That guy, I can't remember, Bob somebody or other, that the regent that got rid of affirmative action. He became a regent because of affirmative action, and then he's we need to get rid of it. Again, these coons, like Malcolm X said, every plantation needs its house Negro, and these guys are just they're the worst of the worst. They're really disgusting people. They're mercenary.
Gatekeepers.
They're traitors.
Gatekeepers. Yep. Let me see here. Let me pull this up. Yeah, I have no tolerance for the gatekeepers. Let's see. What was this one? Okay.
President Biden has responded to what happened. I don't think I have it in front of me, but what would you like to see at a national level? I mean, I think that the country, those who care about, there it is, these kids and these officials gunned down in yet another mass shooting. And what do the GOP officials focus on? Punishing lawmakers who joined thousands of peaceful protesters calling for action. This is a state issue. They can make their own rules in the state house. But at a national level, what would you want to see the response being? And what are your constituents, the people who would like to do? What do you think that they would like to see?
This is a very dangerous precedent for the nation. And so we hope that the nation will continue to see what's going on here and support what's happening in Tennessee. Because if you didn't tell me this was happening to me, I would think it was 1963 instead of 2023. Because what we're seeing is a predominantly white supermajority undoing democracy, forcing their will on my district, which is a predominantly black and brown district, one of the most diverse in Tennessee. And so we see a direct assault on democracy, on our right to free expression, on our right to representation. And so we hope that, the nation will come. The Department of Justice may need to look at this. I know I've been speaking to counsel, and we're going to look at, what are our next steps legally, because I do believe that's unconstitutional. I do believe it's a violation of the rights of not just me, but of my constituents, of the people I represented. And that's the most important thing, is that I did not go to that well in my individual capacity. I went there as a representative of 78,000 Tennesseans whose voices are now silenced because they expelled me and left that seat without a representative.
Yeah, I think he's got a good argument there for his free speech rights being and this free speech rights of 78,000 people. So, like, constitutionally, you're not allowed to disenfranchise voters, right? Now, let's not get into the Democrats had a chance of redoing the Voting Rights Act, but of course, the Democrats, being what they are, made sure that they stabbed us in the back because they're disgusting liberals. So, but anyway, this is really good that they did this, because it's giving him a big microphone, a big platform. It's bringing a lot of attention to it, and it's really good that they expelled him, because, as you heard, they have a super majority. They can do whatever the hell they want. If they hadn't expelled him like this, it would have just been business as usual. Right. They have a super majority. They could do whatever they want. This would have just been yet another ultra conservative state doing some Nazi ass shit, and people would just shrug their shoulders and say, yeah, but they're just a clown show down there, right? But what this does is it makes that, like you said, you've got global media attention on this now. They've become the laughing stock they are, but in a much, again, we are only ever talking about the emperor wears no clothes. Now the nakedness of the KKK, right, is being, all their white hoods are on display, and they're an embarrassment. But once again, sadly, as constituents don't care. It's the Trump effect. The more outrageous and horrible you are, the more racist shit you say, the more your constituency is going to get behind you. I mean, to think that there were millions of unmotivated voters out there because there weren't enough politicians being openly racist enough for them to bother voting. That's how disgusting this society is.
And speaking of, so there was the Tennessee 3, and the white lady that was up for expulsion. This is the result. We're going to show the result of what happened to her and let her, in her own words, then we're going to discuss on the other side of this.
Yes, and we're going to fight hard to get him back. I will answer your question. It might have to do with the color of our skin.
Good for her.
So if nobody heard the question, they asked, why did you think that they did not expel you, and they expelled your colleagues, and she said because of blatantly because of the color of her skin.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good for her. Also, just as a note, it's at 32 minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we are going to close down, and then we're going to come back tomorrow or this weekend, right, guys? Right, Charles?
Yeah.
In the meantime, if you would like to make a donation or go to our merch shop, all of your donations and contributions will help us with our broadcasting. We will greatly, greatly appreciate it. This is just one example of one of the things in our merch shop. And we appreciate you listeners, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you. See y'all
Thank you.
later.